Good morning, it's Sherry Lorenz, your friendly neighborhood realtor with Century 21 Epic. And with me this morning is Stacey Ankrom with Fidelity National Title, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about escrow and title and why we have it. Good morning, Stacey.
Good morning, Sherry. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Again, I am Stacey Ankrom with Fidelity Title. I am an escrow officer. So once you get your buyer or seller into contract, I kind of take it from there. You open up escrow with me.
So are title and escrow the same?
So title and escrow are actually totally two separate entities. The title department researches the property. They search for anything and everything that's ever been recorded against the property from the beginning of time to current.
Okay.
Then escrow is me. We actually handle the transaction. We are the third neutral party. We take instructions. We deal with the buyers, the sellers, listing agent, selling agent, all the monies, the loan documents.
You deal with the lenders too. You talk to lenders
yes.
and things like that for the loans and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're like the little third party entity that everything gets thrown into.
That's right.
And you disseminate everything.
That's right.
Okay, perfect.
And again, third neutral party, we simply take instructions from everybody.
Perfect. So when it comes to title, when you're talking about title, what is title to a property?
Going back to the escrow part, so we are the third neutral party. We handle the transaction, but ultimately at the end of the day, we are actually an insurance company. And so we issue title insurance to both the buyer and if there is a lender, because the lender has a vested interest in the property as well. So we are ensuring that we did our due diligence, that we made sure that the property is free and clear of any liens, judgments, encumbrances. So when we close escrow, we can issue that free and clear title.
Correct. And that is also in case there's anybody else's names on it or anything like that? Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. What happens when escrow closes? What do you do when escrow closes?
At that point, we've already had the document signed by buyers and sellers, and we record. I record the documents at the county, whether there's a loan or it's all cash. And then I disperse the file. So I'm also in charge of handling all the money. So if there's a payoff on the loan, a payoff on the house, I pay that off. I disperse funds to the sellers, commissions to the agents, and anything else that needs to be paid off, such as property taxes, if there were any liens, home warranty.
All the different things. And that all comes out on what you call like it used to be a HUD one, and now they've changed it, and now it's
just
a closing statement.
Closing statement.
Closing statement. And that lists everything, all the different costs.
All the debits and credits, if you will, to buyer and seller.
Okay. What does a buyer or seller need to bring with them when they come to a signing?
Valid ID, absolutely, because they need to notarize the documents. For the sellers, if they would like a wire transfer, their bank information.
Okay.
So we can issue the wire transfer. We can also issue a check. And for the buyers, they would need their funds to close, which could be a cashier's check or a wire. And again, their ID as well.
So their funds to close, they can bring that to title in the form of a cashier's check?
Cashier's check, or they can do a wire transfer.
Wire transfer, no personal checks?
No personal checks.
And that's because of the timing?
Correct.
Okay.
We need 5 business days to clear it.
All right. And we're usually signing how many days before closing?
In a perfect situation, it's a couple days prior to, but we've been known to do it all in the same day.
Okay.
Get the loan documents, sign the buyers, they will then do their wire transfer, the lender will fund and will record and disperse in the same day.
So could you do a cash transaction in the same day?
Yes.
So somebody could sign in the morning, have the funds wired in, and close in the afternoon?
Absolutely.
What's the best thing that came out of COVID when it comes to closings?
DocuSign. DocuSign was introduced, and it's great, especially with an all cash. With the buyers, they can sign electronically.
Is it my understanding too now that the recording is all electronic too?
That is correct.
So how did
Yes.
how did you used to do it before?
So before, back in the good old days, we only had 2 recording times, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And somebody would physically take all the recorded documents, stand in line, and get them recorded. Now it's great because we retain originals and scan to the county. I can record throughout the whole day.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
I know.
It is
really
awesome.
fun because now I actually get calls at all different times
Yes.
instead of those peak times
Right.
where we used to get the calls.
Right. No, it's great.
So one of the big questions that sellers always have is, when am I going to get my money?
Great question. So if we record in the morning, we disperse immediately. The moment we're on record, we disperse. We do not hold funds. So the wire would go out or a check would be cut. And so if it's a morning recording, the funds should hit their account that afternoon. If we record in the PM, again, we will disperse, but because the funds have to go through the Federal Reserve, most likely the next morning, next business day. And if it's on a weekend and we record Friday afternoon, Monday morning.
And so if it's not a wire transfer though, they can come pick a check?
A check would be made available immediately.
Immediately?
Yes.
Perfect. Are there any recent trends in the industry that buyers or sellers should be aware of or anything like that for title?
Well, one thing, and it's not necessarily a trend, I would say, is wire fraud.
I was going to actually ask you. I'm glad you bring that up.
That is definitely something that is real, unfortunately. And Fidelity Title has plenty of protocols. Fidelity has multiple protocols in place that we have to follow to ensure that our buyers and sellers, their money is safe.
And I do have to say they have a great program. They have a portal system in which the sellers and the buyers can actually upload information and everything, and it's very secure.
Yes, and so through that secure portal, the buyers can also access the wiring instructions. That is the only time and the only way they will be able to receive them, unless otherwise in person.
Handing them to them. And that's because of email, and you used to email the instructions?
We would email them, and even though in the beginning we would send them encrypted, a lot of realtors don't have an encrypted system, and it's AOL or Gmail. So what these hackers were doing, they were hacking into a lot of the realtors' emails, not to blame anyone. we can take that out.
That's okay.
But so anyway, that they were hacking in any way they could, really, and they were manipulating the wiring instructions. So it looked like it was coming from me, my email, my signature block, but they would change the account information, and so it would go directly to them and not to Fidelity.
Yeah. I mean, I actually heard there was a couple of times where people lost like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It's very, very unfortunate. It's the worst possible case scenario.
I know. Isn't that crazy? If they could, all those hackers could put their energies into something.
They're brilliant, really.
Yeah, they're very brilliant, you know?
I know.
Are there any common misconceptions that people have about the escrow title process or anything like that? Any scenarios in which, people are not quite understanding?
Sometimes I don't think that they fully understand our role, that we really do take instructions from everybody. We don't get to make any decisions.
Right. That is the hard part, because, everybody thinks that they can tell you something.
Right.
Yeah. And you have to follow the contract that we've sent you.
That's correct.
Right. And the same with the lenders. The lenders send you instructions.
Absolutely. Yep. I have a whole list of instructions from the lenders, everything I have to comply with in order to get the loan funded and closed.
Perfect. One of the questions that I just had recently, and I had it answered to me, is like when we do a refi, sometimes title is able to take credit cards when they're a refinance and people are pulling money out, and they can pay the credit card bills and they can do all that. But I had a situation where we had a closing in which the sellers were hoping to maybe put some bills in to be paid off. And we found out that we couldn't do that. Can you kind of explain why a little bit?
So we are actually, in a refinance, we can pay off credit cards. That is, again, the lender's instructions. The lender has to instruct us to do so. So as a seller, we often get asked to pay off car loans or pay off another loan for another property or credit card debt. We are only allowed to pay anything that is secured to the property, recorded against the property, a deed of trust, a tax lien, solar. So unless it's recorded against the property, we cannot pay it.
Even if an attorney were to submit some instructions?
There are always some exceptions to the rules.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So if there was some kind of court thing going on, then you could actually follow the attorney's instructions. But you have specific instructions.
Because we take instructions and follow them.
Exactly. And you do a good job at that too. So we do know that there's a big lawsuit right now with NAR when it comes to buyers and sellers and commissions and stuff like that. Do you see that affecting title and escrow at all?
No, not at all.
I don't really personally hear it from you. I don't really see it changing much here in what we do. It's all just changing our conversations.
Right.
So, Well, great. I think that's all the questions I have. I'm sure there's going to be questions later on that I may come back to you
Yes.
for and stuff, but is there anything that you can think of that you would like to tell me?
One little kind of tidbit for sellers, if they hold title in their trust, and oftentimes this is one piece of information that is missed, we have to disperse their funds in such a fashion. So it would go to Stacey Ankrom as the trustee of the Stacey Ankrom Trust. So sellers need to make sure that they have a bank account opened in the name of their trust.
Which has happened a few times to me too, in which the seller did not have a
Yes.
trust. And it's very easy to go open your trust. We can talk about that on a different video. But yeah, that is a definite issue with sellers
Yes.
when they have trusts.
I always, once I get the prelim, I always try to bring it to their attention right away. So it's not the last, at the last minute.
Right. I did have one other thing, and I had brought it up earlier about signings and stuff, and I didn't touch on how long do signings usually last. I know it kind of depends if you're buyer or seller.
Sure. So as a buyer and you're obtaining a loan, I would allow for an hour. And sellers, probably about 30 minutes.
And the signings are usually done at the office?
If it can be, oftentimes sellers have already moved, or this is an income property and they don't live in the area, or there are circumstances daily, so we can arrange for a mobile notary, wherever that may be, really any time that works best for our buyers or sellers.
Perfect. When it comes to signing docs for you, you actually have to sign the actual documents right now. There's no digital signing of them.
Correct.
Right.
Some lenders, they are getting a little more savvy with the DocuSign, so they're starting what is called a hybrid signing. So some of the very generic documents can be signed electronically, but then of course the deed of trust, which needs to be notarized, and there are some other documents need to be signed with a notary.
Okay.
Speeds up the process.
So there's not quite as many papers
Yes.
for them to sign at the
Correct.
sitting at the signing.
Yeah.
And that's more for the buyers pretty much
Buyers,
too, right?
And the sellers will always need a notary. That grant deed has to get notarized and recorded at the county.
Perfect. All right, I think that's actually every question that I had for you. I know we said that before, but I think it's really true this time. But I really appreciate you coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No problem. I love learning all this information, and I love sharing information with everybody else too. So if anybody ever has any questions, oh, actually, see, I told you I had one more. I had one more. Are title companies only used for escrows? Can anybody contact you for anything? For if they want to change their title or do any of that stuff? Or is it always usually through an escrow? of some
So
sort?
if a homeowner wants to add a party to their property, change the vesting, unfortunately, we can no longer handle that.
No.
We used to do what is called an accommodation deed, where we would draw it, record it, but we're not insuring it, so it became a liability. So we
Okay.
can no longer do that. So
So
unless we are handling the transaction and issuing title insurance.
Even for a grant deed now, even if
For a
it's
grant
just
deed.
changed. Wow,
Yeah.
I did not know that. See,
It's
I learned
unfortunate.
something today.
Yeah.
So how would we go about that? We have to go through an attorney at that point?
There's a company, a local company that will do it. And I want to
Okay.
say it's $300, somewhere around there. They'll prepare the deed, they'll prepare the notary, and then get it recorded.
That's a good thing to know, because sometimes we do have that.
I get those questions all the time.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I promise that was the end. That was the last question that I had. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think I do.
All right. Well, perfect. Again, thank you so much
Thank
for being
you so
here.
much.
And you did fabulous.